A man thinks he rescued a puppy, but when the vet sees it, he screams in shock. Out on a stormy desert highway, a lonely mechanic pulls over to save a shivering little creature from the rain. Its eyes are bright blue, its ears too long, and its tiny body trembles in his arms. He rushes it to the clinic, believing he's done something good, until the vet's face drains of color. What's lying on that table isn't a dog at all, and what's buried under its fur could destroy lives. Suddenly, the man who just wanted to help finds himself tangled in something far bigger and far more dangerous than he ever imagined. Someone doesn't want this puppy found. And out there in the dark, something wild is waiting to take it back. Why did the vet scream? What secret is this creature carrying, and how far will powerful men go to keep it buried? I'd love to know. Where are you watching from? Type it down below, and while you're here, subscribe so you'll always catch the next story. The spring storm lashed across the Arizona highway like an angry whip, pelting Bram Kincaid's pickup truck with sheets of icy rain. His windshield wipers fought a losing battle against the downpour, squeaking back and forth in a frantic rhythm. The darkness pressed in from all sides, broken only by his headlights cutting through the gloom. Bram's weathered hands gripped the steering wheel tighter. He'd seen his share of desert storms during his years working the fire crews, but this one had a particular meanness to it. The rain drummed against the roof of his truck, creating a hollow echo that matched his mood. Something small and pale darted across his headlights. Damn! Bram stomped on the brakes, his truck fishtailing slightly on the wet asphalt. His heart hammered against his ribs as he squinted through the rain-streaked windshield. There, huddled against the guardrail, was what looked like a puppy. The animal shivered violently, its wet fur plastered to its small frame. Bram's throat tightened. He couldn't just leave it there. Without hesitation, he pulled onto the shoulder, emergency lights blinking against the darkness. When he stepped out into the storm, the rain immediately soaked through his shirt. The wind howled around him as he approached the trembling creature slowly, not wanting to frighten it. "Hey there," he called softly, his voice nearly lost in the storm. "It's okay. I won't hurt you." The puppy raised its head, and Bram froze. Its eyes were an impossible shade of blue, not the normal blue you might see in a husky, but something almost electric, something that seemed to glow in the darkness. Tears appeared to track down its face, though Bram told himself it had to be the rain. The ears were odd, too, longer than they should be, with strange, pointed tips. Something wasn't right here. His instincts, honed by years of reading wildfire patterns, screamed at him that this wasn't what it seemed. But as the creature let out a pitiful whimper, those doubts melted away like smoke in the rain. "Can't leave you out here, can I?" Bram shrugged off his oil-stained jacket, the one he'd worn earlier while working in his salvage yard. The familiar smells of motor oil and metal clung to the fabric as he wrapped it gently around the shivering animal. It didn't resist, seeming too weak or cold to fight. The puppy felt unnaturally light in his arms as he carried it back to his truck. Up close, its features seemed even stranger, the slope of its snout, the texture of its fur. But Bram pushed those thoughts aside. Right now, what mattered was getting it somewhere warm and safe. He remembered passing Dr. Rill's veterinary clinic about 10 miles back. The old vet kept late hours, something Bram had learned during his few necessary visits with local strays that had wandered into his yard. If anyone was still open on a night like this, it would be Keaton Rill. Bram settled the bundled animal on the passenger seat, cranking up the heater. The truck's engine roared as he made a U-turn, sending up sheets of water from the flooded road. Every few seconds, he glanced over at his passenger, watching its shallow breathing, those uncanny blue eyes now half closed. The drive to the clinic seemed to take forever, though his speedometer showed he was pushing well above the limit. The rain barely let up, and twice he nearly missed his turn in the darkness. Finally, the clinic's lights appeared ahead like a beacon, the open sign glowing steadily in the window. Bram parked haphazardly near the entrance, gathered up his jacket-wrapped bundle, and rushed through the rain to the door. The bell jingled as he burst in, bringing with him a gust of wind and water. Dr. Rill looked up from his desk, his silver hair catching the fluorescent light. "Bram?" he asked, pushing his thick glasses up his nose. "What brings you out in this?" His voice trailed off as he caught sight of what Bram carried. "Found it on the highway," Bram explained, water dripping from his clothes onto the linoleum floor. "It's in bad shape, Doc." Keaton moved quickly for a man in his 50s, clearing space on an examination table. "Bring it here," he ordered, his gentle voice taking on a professional edge. As Bram set the bundle down, the vet carefully unwrapped the jacket. The harsh clinic lights made the puppy's strange features even more apparent. Dr. Rill's hands, usually so sure and steady, hesitated for just a moment as he began his examination. His expression changed, surprise, confusion, then something Bram couldn't quite read. "What is it, Doc?" Bram asked, his voice rough with concern. "I'm not entirely—" Keaton caught himself, focusing on connecting monitoring equipment. Soon the small room filled with the steady beep of vital signs. "Let's get it stabilized first. Then we can figure out exactly what we're dealing with." Bram stood back, his clothes slowly drying in the warm clinic air, creating a small puddle beneath his boots. The storm continued its assault outside, rain hammering against the windows like it was trying to get in. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, mixing with the electronic beeping of the monitors in a symphony of uncertainty. He should feel relieved. He'd gotten the creature to help, done what needed doing. But something nagged at him, a feeling he couldn't shake. Had he just made things worse? Should he have left well enough alone? The last time he'd tried to save something? Bram pushed that thought away, hard. He focused instead on the rise and fall of the small creature's chest, on Dr. Rill's careful movements as he worked. The vet's hands moved with practiced efficiency, checking vitals, administering fluids, his face set in concentration. "Will it make it?" Bram finally asked, breaking the silence. Keaton glanced up, his eyes serious behind his glasses. "Hard to say right now, but you did the right thing bringing it in, Bram. Whatever it is, it wouldn't have survived much longer out there." Bram nodded, but the knot in his stomach didn't ease. He'd done what needed doing, what any decent person would do. So why did he feel like he'd just stepped into something much bigger than a simple rescue? The monitors continued their steady beeping, marking time in the sterile room. Outside, the storm raged on, but in here, in this moment, Bram could only wait and watch, hoping he hadn't made a terrible mistake by following his heart instead of his head. Dr. Rill worked methodically, his movements precise and practiced. Every so often he would pause, make a note on his chart, or adjust something on the monitoring equipment. The puppy's breathing had steadied somewhat, but those strange blue eyes remained half closed, watching them both with an unsettling awareness. Bram stood rooted to his spot, unable to leave despite the late hour and his own exhaustion. He'd always been a man of few words and fewer attachments since the fire that had taken everything from him. But something about this creature, about this night, had broken through his carefully maintained isolation. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, counting out the minutes as the storm continued its assault on the small clinic. Bram's oil-stained jacket lay forgotten in a wet heap on the floor, a reminder of the simple life he'd been living just hours ago, before those strange blue eyes had changed everything. Dr. Rill's methodical examination suddenly halted. He stood perfectly still, staring at the X-ray screen with an intensity that made Bram's stomach tighten. The vet's usually gentle features had gone rigid, his fingers gripping the edge of the light board. "Doc?" Bram's voice came out rougher than intended. "What is it?" Keaton took a deep breath, adjusting his thick glasses. "This isn't a dog, Bram." He pointed to the X-ray image, where a small, dark object was clearly visible beneath the animal's skin. "See that? That's a tranquilizer microdart. And this..." Ho traced another shape on the image. "This is a tracking collar. Y9. Y9? Bram stepped closer, squinting at the image. The numbers meant nothing to him, but the gravity in Keaton's voice told him everything he needed to know. "It's a Mexican gray wolf pup." Keaton's words fell heavy in the quiet room. "An endangered species. Someone darted it, probably separated it from its pack." He turned to face Bram directly. "Having it in possession, even with the best intentions, that's a federal offense." The beeping of the monitors seemed louder now, more accusatory. Bram's mind raced back to the moment on the highway, the strange blue eyes that had caught his attention. He'd known something was different about this animal, but this... "How much trouble are we talking about?" Bram asked, though he already knew the answer wouldn't be good. Keaton ran a hand through his silver hair. "Under normal circumstances, serious trouble. But right now, we have bigger problems." He glanced at the small form under the thermal blanket. "Wolf pups this young need to stay with their pack. If we don't get this little one back to its den soon, the pack might abandon the area entirely. That would be a death sentence." The storm outside punctuated his words with a crack of thunder. Bram watched the pup's chest rise and fall under the blanket, each breath a tiny victory against whatever forces had conspired to separate it from its family. "What's our next move?" Bram asked, surprising himself with the hour. When had this become his fight? Keaton was already reaching for his phone. "I'm calling Wildlife Services. They need to know about this." He paused, looking at Bram with sympathy. "You should probably go. The less you're involved from here, the better." But Bram couldn't move. The pup's blue eyes had opened slightly, fixing on him with that same unnerving intelligence he'd noticed on the highway. Something inside him shifted, a decision making itself before his conscious mind could catch up. "I'm staying," he said quietly. "Already broke the law bringing it here. Might as well see it through." Keaton nodded, as if he'd expected nothing less. He dialed, the phone's glow illuminating his worried features. "This is Dr. Keaton Rill at Desert Hills Veterinary. I need to report a rescued Mexican gray wolf pup, collar ID Y9. He listened for a moment. "Yes, it's stable. But there's evidence of trafficking involvement, a tranquilizer dart." While Keaton spoke, Bram moved closer to the examination table. The pup was warmer now, its fur beginning to dry. Under the harsh clinic lights, he could see details he'd missed in the rain, the distinctive markings that should have told him this was no ordinary dog, the sophisticated collar barely visible beneath the thick fur. "They're sending someone," Keaton said, ending the call. "But it'll take time in this weather." He began gathering supplies, his movements precise and purposeful. "We need to document everything. Photos, measurements, samples, evidence of whatever operation separated this pup from its pack." Bram watched as the clinic transformed from a place of healing to something more urgent, a command center for what was quickly becoming a rescue mission. Medical instruments were replaced with cameras and specimen containers. The steady beeping of monitors reminded them that time was running out for more than just the pup. "Here," Keaton handed Bram a camera. "Start taking photos of any marks or injuries you can see. I'll draw blood samples." He paused, meeting Bram's eyes. "You understand what you're risking by staying?" Bram took the camera, his oil-stained hands steady despite everything. "Wouldn't be the first time I've been on the wrong side of the law for the right reasons." The words came out before he could stop them. Memories of his past life as a wildfire crewman surfacing unbidden. They worked in focused silence, interrupted only by the storm and the quiet whimpers of the pup when a procedure caused discomfort. Each photo, each sample was another piece of evidence against whoever had done this, but it was also time ticking away from the crucial window they had to reunite the pup with its pack. "The dart's clean," Keaton announced, examining the tiny projectile he'd carefully removed. "Professional grade. Whoever did this knew what they were doing." He sealed it in a specimen container, labeling it with practiced efficiency. The implications hung heavy in the air. This wasn't some random act, it was organized, purposeful. Someone was targeting these endangered wolves, and this pup was proof of their operation. Bram looked down at the viewfinder, reviewing the photos he'd taken. Bruises from rough handling showed dark against the pup's skin, telling a story of its capture and transport. His jaw tightened. He'd left his old life behind, sworn off getting involved in others' problems. But standing here, watching this tiny creature fight for survival, he knew he'd already crossed a line there was no coming back from. Outside, the storm began to ease, but inside the clinic, the tension only grew. They were no longer just treating an injured animal. They were gathering evidence, racing against time, and stepping into something much larger than a simple rescue. The pup stirred under the thermal blanket, those striking blue eyes finding Bram's again. In them, he saw something that resonated deep within him, a fight for survival, a need for connection, a chance at redemption. He'd been alone for so long, hiding from his past failures. But now, faced with this new challenge, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Purpose. Keaton's voice cut through his thoughts. "Wildlife Services says their team is about an hour out." He was preparing another set of instruments, his movements betraying his concern. "The pup's stable, but every hour it's away from the pack decreases the chances of successful reintegration." Bram nodded, understanding the weight of what wasn't being said. They were now part of something that went beyond legal consequences or personal risk. This was about survival, not just of the pup, but of an entire species struggling to reclaim its place in the world. The clinic's fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting sharp shadows as they continued their work. Every beep of the monitors, every whimper from the pup, every rumble of distant thunder reminded them that time was slipping away. But with each passing moment, their impromptu partnership grew stronger, united by a common purpose that transcended their individual fears and hesitations. The clinic's front door burst open, bringing with it a gust of rain-laden wind and a woman whose determined stride matched the intensity in her sharp green eyes. Her copper-brown hair was pulled back in a practical braid, drops of rain still clinging to her weatherproof jacket. "Dr. Rill." She scanned the room quickly, her gaze settling on the wolf pup. "I'm Mara Delaney, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services." Keaton stepped forward, extending his hand. "Agent Delaney, thank you for coming so quickly." "Just Mara?" she corrected, already moving toward Y9. Her movements were precise and practiced as she examined the pup. "The dart wound is clean?" "Removed and secured," Keaton confirmed, along with blood samples and photographic evidence. Bram stood back, watching the interaction. He could see the wheels turning in Mara's head as she processed the situation. Her fingers traced the sophisticated collar on Y9's neck, checking readings only she understood. "We need to move fast," she announced, straightening up. "This pup's from the Shadow Ridge pack. Their den is about 40 miles northeast of here, but in this weather—" She glanced at the window where rain still drummed steadily. "I know those roads," Bram spoke up, drawing her attention. "Every washout and safe crossing. I can get us there?" Mara's eyes narrowed slightly. "And you are?" "Bram Kincaid. I found the pup." "Mr. Kincaid, I appreciate what you've done, but this is now a federal operation involving an endangered species. We can't risk—" "With all due respect," Bram interrupted, his voice steady, "those back roads turn into rivers when it rains like this. One wrong turn and you'll lose precious time." He moved to the window, pointing north. "There's 3 ways up to that ridge. 2 of them are probably already washed out. The third requires local knowledge." Mara crossed her arms, studying him. "You seem very invested in this." "I am." Bram met her gaze without flinching. "And I've got a modified 4-wheel drive that can handle whatever these roads throw at us." As if to emphasize his point, thunder rolled overhead, and the lights flickered briefly. Mara's expression shifted from skepticism to calculation. "Show me your truck," she said finally. Outside, the rain had eased to a steady drizzle. Bram led them to his vehicle, a heavy-duty pickup modified for the demanding terrain of the borderlands. He popped the hood, revealing the upgraded systems within. "Custom suspension," he explained, pointing out various modifications. "Extra ground clearance, reinforced chassis, winch rated for 16,000 pounds. And—" He moved to the back, showing her the specialized rigging setup. "Secure mounting points for any kind of cargo." Mara ran her hand along the custom framework, her expression softening slightly. "You've done search and rescue work?" "Wildfire crew," Bram answered simply, leaving the rest unsaid. She nodded, understanding filling the silence. "All right. You drive, I navigate. But we follow my lead on everything else. Clear?" "Crystal." Back inside, Keaton had already prepared a transport carrier for Y9, lining it with thermal blankets and heat packs. "I'm sending saline and additional medical supplies," he said, packing a waterproof bag. "The scan data's on this drive." He handed Mara a small USB stick. "Everything we documented tonight." The process of moving Y9 was delicate. The pup was still groggy from the tranquilizer, but alert enough to watch them with those unnervingly intelligent blue eyes. Bram helped Mara secure the carrier in his truck's back seat, using his rigging expertise to ensure it wouldn't shift during the rough ride ahead. "I'll follow you to the town limits," Keaton said, grabbing his keys. "After that, you're on your own." The clock on the dashboard read 11:45 when they pulled out of the clinic's parking lot. Bram's headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating sheets of rain. In the passenger seat, Mara studied a topographical map on her tablet, occasionally glancing back at Y9. "Dawn's at 5:17, she said. "That gives us just over 5 hours to reach the den site. The pack won't wait longer." Bram nodded, hands steady on the wheel as they left the last streetlights behind. In his rearview mirror, Keaton's headlights followed faithfully until they reached the town's edge. The vet flashed his lights once in farewell, then turned back, leaving them alone with their precious cargo and the storm-swept night. The convoy had become 2, Bram's truck and its passengers, pushing forward into darkness split only by headlights and purpose. Y9 whimpered softly from the carrier, a sound that seemed to carry all the weight of their mission. Mara adjusted her seatbelt, her professional demeanor softening slightly as she looked at Bram. "That was good work back there, with the rigging. Most people wouldn't have thought about securing the carrier that way." "Most people haven't had to secure critical cargo in emergency conditions," Bram replied, eyes fixed on the road ahead as he navigated around a deep puddle. The rain drummed on the roof, creating a rhythm that matched the steady hum of the engine. They were committed now, two strangers united by circumstance and a shared determination to right a wrong. The headlights carved through the darkness, illuminating their path one section at a time, while behind them, a small wolf pup watched with eyes that seemed to hold both trust and urgency. Time was their enemy now. Every minute that ticked by was another minute. Y9 was separated from its pack. Another minute closer to dawn, another minute the den might decide to move on without their lost member. But they had advantages too. Bram's intimate knowledge of the terrain, Mara's scientific expertise, and a modified truck capable of handling whatever challenges lay ahead. Thunder rolled overhead, a reminder of nature's indifference to their mission. But in the warm cab of the truck, with determination shared between driver and passenger, and precious cargo secured behind them, there was a sense of purpose that seemed stronger than the storm. The radio crackled in Clive Roebuck's study, its static-filled chatter usually nothing more than background noise to his evening paperwork. But tonight, two words cut through his concentration like a knife. Wolf pup. He set down his whiskey glass and turned up the volume. The conversation was between local emergency services, something about a rescue, a vet clinic, and federal wildlife authorities being called in. Roebuck's weathered face hardened as he listened, deep lines forming around his mouth. With deliberate slowness, he reached for his phone and pressed a number on speed dial. It rang twice before a gruff voice answered. "Perry, get over here, now." 20 minutes later, Perry Malik's mud-splattered truck pulled up to Roebuck's ranch house. The enforcer's boots left wet tracks on the polished hardwood as he entered the study. Rain dripped from his leather jacket onto the expensive carpet, but Roebuck didn't seem to notice. "We've got a situation," Roebuck said, standing at his desk. "One of those Mexican Greys got picked up tonight. A pup." He spat the word like it was poison. "They're trying to return it to the den." Malik's scarred face remained impassive, but his eyes narrowed slightly. "Which means," Roebuck said, his voice dropping dangerously low. "Everything we've worked for could go up in smoke. I've spent months building this case with the County Predator Board, documented every attack, filed all the right paperwork, one happy reunion story, and public sentiment shifts. We lose our shot at the removal order." He walked to a large map mounted on the wall, showing the county's ranching territories. His family's landholdings were marked in red, vast swathes of grazing territory that had been in the Roebuck name for generations. "These wolves," he continued, jabbing a finger at the map, "they're more than just predators. They're a symbol. Every time some city-bred conservationist succeeds in protecting them, it chips away at our authority, our way of life." He turned to face Malik. "I won't let that happen." Malik nodded slowly. "What do you need?" "Intercept them. Whatever it takes to make sure that pup doesn't make it back to its pack." Roebuck's voice was calm, reasonable, the voice of a man discussing business, not plotting interference with endangered species. "Take the gear, all of it." Malik knew exactly what gear he meant. The tranquilizer darts, the signal jammers, the high-powered rifle with the suppressor. Tools they'd used before when dealing with problem wolves. "There's federal involvement now," Malik pointed out. "Wildlife services." "I'm aware." Roebuck walked to his desk and picked up his phone again. "That's why we're calling in some local backup, someone who knows how to look the other way." Deputy Sloan Hardigan was just finishing his patrol route when his personal cell phone rang. Seeing Roebuck's number, he pulled over to the side of the rain-slicked road. "Evening, Clive," he answered, trying to sound casual despite the late hour. "Sloan?" Roebuck's voice was smooth as aged bourbon. Remember that favor you owe me? Time to collect. Hartigan's grip tightened on the phone. He did remember. The overlooked irregularities in Roebuck's predator compensation claims, the expedited permits, the complaints fast-tracked through the system. Small things, really. Just helping out a pillar of the community. At least, that's how he'd justified it to himself. "What do you need?" he asked, already dreading the answer. "There's a situation developing with one of those wolves. My man Malik is handling it, but he might need some official cover. If anyone asks, you're investigating reports of suspicious vehicles in the North County. Understanding me?" Hartigan closed his eyes briefly. "Yeah, I understand." "Good man. Malik will contact you with coordinates." The line went dead, leaving Hartigan alone with the sound of rain on his patrol car's roof and the weight of decisions that seemed to get heavier with each passing year. Meanwhile, Malik was already loading his truck. The gear went in methodically. First the basic tools that could be explained away, then the more specialized equipment hidden underneath. The rifle, cleaned and checked, went last. He pulled a waterproof tarp over everything and secured it tight. His phone buzzed with a text from Roebuck. Coordinates where the vet clinic's radio traffic had placed the rescue vehicle, along with likely route options based on the terrain. Malik studied them, already plotting intercept points. The rain would work in his favor, limiting visibility, masking sound, forcing them to stick to certain roads. He sent the information to Deputy Hartigan with a brief message. "North County Patrol, keep your radio on Channel 3. Then he climbed into his truck and started the engine. The dash clock read 12:30 as Malik pulled out of Roebuck's ranch. He knew these roads like the scars on his hands, every washout, every alternate route, every place where a vehicle might be forced to slow down. The rain hammered his windshield as he drove, but he barely noticed it. Back in his study, Roebuck returned to his desk and picked up his whiskey. He'd built everything he had on control. Control of the land, of people, of nature itself. The wolves threatened that control. They were a reminder that some things couldn't be bought or bullied into submission. He took a long drink, then reached for his phone one more time. There were other calls to make. People who needed to be reminded where their loyalties lay. Stories that needed to start circulating about increased wolf activity threatening livestock. By morning, he wanted the groundwork laid. The rain continued to fall, drawing a dark curtain across the county. Somewhere out there, a truck carried a wolf pup toward home, while another vehicle moved to intercept it. And in his warm study, Clive Roebuck orchestrated it all, like a conductor leading a symphony of control and consequence. Through the deluge, Perry Malik drove with singular focus. His headlights caught the silvery curtains of rain, but his mind was already running through scenarios, planning contingencies. He'd done jobs like this before for Roebuck, making problems disappear, ensuring things went the way they were supposed to. This was just another job. His radio crackled with Deputy Hartigan's voice. "In position on County Road 44. No traffic yet." "Copy that," Malik responded. "Keep me posted." They had the advantage of numbers and local knowledge. More importantly, they had motivation. Roebuck paid well for results, and everyone involved knew what failure would mean. The wolf pup had to be stopped from reaching its den, not just for Roebuck's immediate plans, but for everything those plans represented. The rain drummed steadily on the truck's roof as Malik checked his mirrors, watching for any signs of the vehicle they were hunting. Behind him, under the tarp, lay everything he needed to ensure this night went exactly as Clive Roebuck wanted it to go. In the darkness and the rain, the hunters had become the hunted, though Bram and Mara had no way of knowing it yet. They were focused only on their mission, getting Y9 home before dawn. But the night was long. The storm showed no signs of letting up, and other forces were now in motion, drawing closer with every passing minute. The sleet drummed against the truck's windshield in a steady rhythm, less violent than the earlier downpour, but somehow more ominous in its persistence. Bram's wipers swept back and forth, clearing just enough visibility to keep them on the winding road. In the passenger seat, Mara held a small evidence bag up to the dim dome light, studying the microdart they'd extracted from Y9's flesh. Her brow furrowed as she turned the dart over with gloved fingers. "Something's not right here," she muttered, more to herself than to Bram. She pulled out a small magnifying glass from her field kit and leaned closer. "What do you mean?" Bram asked, glancing sideways while keeping most of his attention on the treacherous road. "The machining on this dart." Mara's voice was tight with concern. "I've seen hundreds of tranquilizer darts in my work, standard issue, research grade, even some black market stuff. But this..." She traced a finger along the dart's barrel. "The threading pattern is all wrong for any legitimate manufacturer." From the carrier in the back seat came a soft whimper. Y9 was stirring again, fighting the lingering effects of whatever drug had been in that dart. Bram adjusted the heater, trying to maintain the steady warmth the pup needed. "I've encountered this particular machining style before," Mara continued, her voice dropping lower. "It shows up in seizures connected to wildlife trafficking rings. These aren't the tools of ranchers protecting their herds, or even poachers looking for trophies. This is organized crime." Bram's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "You're saying someone's stealing live wolves?" "That's exactly what I'm saying." Mara carefully returned the dart to its evidence bag. "Mexican gray wolves are worth a fortune on the black market. Private collectors, illegal breeding operations, even some overseas wildlife parks that are really fronts for trafficking." She shook her head. Y9 wasn't just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Someone deliberately targeted this pup. The truck's radio crackled with static as they climbed higher into the hills. Bram reached over and adjusted it, but the signal remained weak. The sleet was letting up slightly, but the night pressed in around them, broken only by their headlights and the occasional flash of eyes from small creatures along the roadside. "We need to make better time," Mara said, checking her watch. "Dawn's coming faster than I'd like, and if we don't get Y9 back before first light..." "The pack moves on," Bram finished. He'd been doing mental calculations since they left the clinic. "There's a choice coming up. The direct route takes us up some nasty switchbacks, faster but exposed, or we can loop around through the old logging roads, longer but more protected." Mara pulled out her tablet, bringing up a topographical map. The blue glow illuminated her face as she studied their options. "The switchbacks worry me in this weather. One slip..." "But the logging route adds 45 minutes we might not have," Bram pointed out. He could see both paths in his mind, the treacherous but direct climb versus the gentler but much longer circuit. From the back seat, Y9 let out another whimper, this one stronger. Mara turned to check on him. "He's fighting hard, that's good. Means the drug is wearing off. But it also means we need to move fast. A stressed pup is harder to reintegrate with the pack." Bram nodded, already steering toward the switchback route. "Speed over comfort, then. I know these roads. We'll make it work." "You're sure?" Mara asked, though she was already stowing her tablet and checking their emergency gear. "No," Bram admitted. "But sometimes you have to choose the hard right over the easy wrong." The truck began to climb more steeply as they approached the first switchback. Bram downshifted, feeling the engine's response. The sleet had left a treacherous sheen on the road, but the truck's heavy-duty tires bit into the surface with reassuring grip. "This changes everything," Mara said softly, her mind still on the dart. if there's an organized trafficking operation targeting these wolves. She pulled out her phone, checking the signal. No service. As soon as we can, I need to alert my superiors. This goes way beyond local politics now. Bram navigated another turn, the truck's headlights briefly sweeping across empty space before finding the next section of road. How many wolves in Y9's pack? 7, including him. 2 breeding adults, 3 yearlings from last season, and another pup from this year's litter. Mara's voice took on a professor's tone, sharing knowledge to keep their minds off the precipitous drops beside them. Mexican gray wolves are incredibly social. Every member has a role in raising the pups, teaching them to hunt, protecting the territory. Makes them easier targets, Bram observed grimly. Hurt one, you hurt them all. Exactly. And if someone's systematically targeting them for capture, Mara let the thought hang in the cold air between them. The truck rounded another switchback, engine growling against the grade. Each mile seemed to bring them deeper into the complexity of their mission. What had started as a simple rescue was revealing itself as something far darker, a thread that, when pulled, might unravel an entire criminal enterprise. Y9 stirred again, more forcefully this time. The pup's movement reminded them both of the immediate stakes. Whatever larger concerns loomed, their first duty was to this one small life, this link in an ancient chain of wild survival. How much further to the den site? Bram asked, keeping his eyes fixed on the road ahead. Mara consulted her GPS unit. About 15 miles as the crow flies. But up here... She gestured at the twisting road. Nothing flies straight, Bram finished. He checked his mirrors, more out of habit than necessity. The road behind them was as empty as it had been all night, swallowed by darkness and weather. They climbed higher into the mountains, each mile marking progress but also narrowing their window of opportunity. The sleet continued to fall, not heavy enough to stop them but persistent enough to demand constant vigilance. Both Bram and Mara felt the pressure of time pushing against them, but neither spoke of it. They had chosen their path. Now they had to see it through. Y9's occasional movements and vocalizations became their timeline, each sound stronger than the last. The pup was fighting his way back to full consciousness, and when he got there, their task would become even more challenging. A fully aware wolf pup, even a young one, was no easy thing to handle. The night pressed in around them, but in the truck's cab, a sense of shared purpose had solidified. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The mechanic who couldn't ignore suffering and the biologist who wouldn't abandon hope, united in their determination to see one small wolf home. The one-lane bridge loomed ahead, its weathered planks spanning a rain-swollen arroyo. Bram slowed the truck, scanning the crossing with practiced caution. Years of driving these back roads had taught him to read the signs, the way water pressed against supports, how timber creaked under stress. This doesn't look good, Mara said, leaning forward to peer through the sleet-streaked windshield. Before Bram could respond, a sharp crack split the night. The truck lurched violently as the front tire exploded. The steering wheel bucked in Bram's hands as the vehicle fishtailed toward the bridge's edge. Y9 yelped from his carrier, the sound mixing with the screech of metal on wood. "Hold on!" Bram shouted. He fought the skid, muscles straining as he worked the wheel. The truck's rear end swung wide, then caught against the bridge's guardrail with a bone-jarring crunch. They stopped half on, half off the planking, the blown tire hanging over empty space. Through the rearview mirror, Bram caught a flash of movement, a figure ducking behind a boulder. Another shot pinged off the truck's hood. "Malik," Mara breathed, recognizing the threat. "We need to move." Bram was already moving, his mind racing through options. The truck was stuck, but not helpless. He reached under his seat and pulled out a heavy-duty flashlight. "When I say go, grab Y9. and head for the other side. Stay low, use the rail for cover." He clicked on the light, sweeping it across the arroyo. The beam caught churning water below, then glinted off something else. Keaton's truck, parked behind some scrub oak about 200 yards back. The vet had followed them, after all. Another shot cracked out, missing high. Bram used the distraction to slide out his door, staying in the truck's shadow. The winch mounted on his front bumper might be their only chance. He unspooled the cable, ignoring the sting of sleet against his face. "Ready?" he called to Mara. She nodded, already unbuckling and reaching for Y9's carrier. Bram wrapped the winch cable around the nearest bridge support, then secured it to his truck's frame. The setup wasn't pretty, but it would have to hold. Water roared beneath them, and he could feel subtle vibrations through the planking. The bridge was starting to give. "Go, now!" Mara burst from the passenger side, clutching the carrier close. She stayed crouched, moving quick and sure despite the slick wood. Another shot sparked off the railing behind her, but she didn't falter. Bram provided cover, shouting instructions. "Keep to the right, watch that loose board." His voice carried over the storm, steady and clear. Years of working rescue had taught him how to cut through panic with calm direction. Through the gloom, he saw Keaton emerge from his hiding spot. The vet moved with surprising agility, reaching the far end of the bridge. He braced himself against a support post, ready to help Mara across the final gap. The bridge groaned. Chunks of the bank began falling away, where Malik's shots had weakened the structure. Bram felt the truck shift ominously as support beams splintered. "Almost there," he muttered, watching Mara's progress. Y9 had gone quiet in his carrier, as if sensing the need for absolute focus. Keaton reached out, grabbing Mara's arm to steady her final steps. They made it to solid ground just as a section of planking gave way behind them, falling into the churning water below. Bram didn't waste time celebrating. He scrambled back into the truck cab, threw it in reverse, and gave it gas. The winch cable went taut, metal straining against metal. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then the wheels caught, and the truck began to inch backward. More shots came, but they were hurried now, poorly aimed. Malik would have to move soon. The bridge's collapse had cut off his pursuit route. With a final heave, Bram's truck cleared the bridge. He didn't stop until they were safely on the far side, where Mara and Keaton waited with Y9. "You okay?" he asked, jumping out to check on them. Mara nodded, her face pale but determined. "Y9's fine. Scared, but fine." "That was too close," Keaton said, his glasses foggy with rain. "I'll draw them off. Take the West Fork. They won't expect that." Bram wanted to argue, but there wasn't time. The bridge gave another ominous crack, and more planking fell away. They needed to move before the whole structure came down. "Be careful," Mara told Keaton, as they transferred Y9's carrier to Bram's truck. The vet managed a tight smile. "Always am. Now go. Get that pup home." They piled back into Bram's truck, the blown tire already replaced with a spare. As they pulled away, Bram caught a last glimpse of Keaton's taillights heading in the opposite direction. Behind them, the sound of falling timber and rushing water marked the bridge's final collapse. The crossing had cost them precious minutes, but they were still moving. In the back seat, Y9 let out a soft whimper, a reminder of why they couldn't stop, why every obstacle had to be overcome. "That was some driving back there," Mara said quietly. "And the winch setup. You've done this before." Bram kept his eyes on the road, but his voice carried years of experience. "Used to work wildfire crew. You learn to improvise or you don't survive." They drove on through the storm, the truck's headlights cutting through darkness that seemed to grow thicker with each mile. The night wasn't over yet, and they both knew Malik wouldn't give up easily. But they'd crossed one bridge, literal and figurative, and they'd cross whatever came next. Y9's whimper grew stronger, more alert. Time was running out, but they were still in the fight. Sometimes, Bram reflected, that was all you could ask for. A chance to keep going, to finish what you started, no matter what stood in your way. The truck's heater struggled against the damp cold that had settled into their bones after the bridge crossing. Bram guided them along the West Fork, taking the turns with practiced ease despite the slick roads. Their breath came in visible puffs inside the cab, a reminder of just how far the temperature had dropped. Mara's phone buzzed, cutting through the tense silence. Her fingers, still trembling slightly from their close call, fumbled with the device. "It's from Keaton," she said, opening a series of incoming texts. The screen's blue glow illuminated her face as she studied the first image. Her expression shifted from curiosity to focused intensity. "Bram, pull over when you can. You need to see this." He found a wider shoulder beneath an overhanging rock face that offered some shelter from the persistent drizzle. The engine idled, maintaining heat for Y9 in the back seat as Mara held out her phone. "These are from supposed wolf kills on Roebuck's ranch," she explained, zooming in on the first photo. "Look at these wounds." Bram leaned closer, squinting at the image of a dead calf. Even in the dim light of the phone screen, something seemed off about the injuries. The cuts were too clean, too precise. "Wolves tear at their prey," Mara continued, her voice tight with controlled anger. "These are knife wounds, deliberately inflicted to look like attack patterns, but the edges are all wrong. No jagged tears, no crushing damage from powerful jaws." She swiped to the next photo. "And here, see this scat they found nearby? It's planted. Real wolf scat shows bone fragments, fur, specific content from their diet. This is staged. Completely fabricated." Bram's hands gripped the steering wheel tighter as understanding dawned. "They're faking attacks? Not just faking them." Mara pulled up another image, showing bite mark measurements. "These spacing patterns don't match any known wolf dentition. They're not even close. But look at the date stamps. These were all approved as confirmed wolf predation by Deputy Hartigan within 24 hours of being reported." Y9 stirred in his carrier, letting out a small whine. The sound seemed to sharpen their focus on what the evidence was telling them. "Roebuck's been pushing hard for lethal removal orders," Bram said slowly, pieces falling into place. "Claims the wolves are destroying his herd, while he's actually destroying evidence." Mara's voice was bitter. "These aren't careless assessments by Hartigan. This is systematic fraud. Each confirmed kill means compensation money, plus ammunition for his anti-wolf campaign." She pulled up more photos, each one adding weight to their discovery. "But it's worse than that. The trafficking connection with the dart we found on Y9? I think Malik isn't just Roebuck's muscle. He's his pipeline to the illegal wildlife trade." "They're profiting twice," Bram said, his jaw tightening. "Once from fake predation claims, then again by capturing and selling the wolves themselves." "Exactly. Stage attacks, get removal orders, then instead of killing the wolves..." Mara trailed off, looking back at Y9. "They're selling them to the highest bidder." The implications hit them both. Y9 wasn't just separated from his pack. He was targeted, darted, meant to disappear into a trafficking network that probably stretched across borders. Bram's hands clenched and unclenched on the wheel. "We have enough here to take to federal authorities. Measurements, forensic evidence, documentation of false claims." "We do," Mara agreed. "But right now..." She glanced at her watch, then out at the lightening eastern sky. "Right now we get Y9 home," Bram finished. The mission's priority hadn't changed, even with this revelation. His pack won't wait for justice to play out. Mara nodded, saving the photos to a secure folder. First light isn't far off. We get him back, then we hand everything to the right people. Fish and Wildlife Service, the Office of Law Enforcement, whoever can shut this operation down properly. The evidence was damning. Not just rumors or suspicions, but hard data. Wound patterns that defied natural predation, staged evidence, fraudulent claims backed by a compromised deputy, a system corrupted to serve both greed and cruelty. Keaton's risking a lot, sending these, Bram observed, putting the truck back in gear. He's always kept detailed records, Mara said. Probably knew something was wrong but needed confirmation. The dart we found gave him the missing piece. They pulled back onto the road, more determined than ever. Y9's soft breathing from the carrier reminded them that abstract evidence of corruption meant nothing if they couldn't first save this one. Very real life. The eastern sky continued to brighten, pushing them onward. Justice would come, but dawn wouldn't wait. Neither would a mother wolf for her pup, regardless of human schemes and greed. Bram navigated the winding road with renewed purpose, every turn bringing them closer to their immediate goal. The truth about Roebuck's operation burned in their minds, but it would have to wait. Some priorities transcended even the exposure of corruption. Right now, in the growing light of morning, they had a family to reunite. The rest, the evidence, the investigations, the consequences, would follow in its own time. First, they had to get Y9 home. Bram pulled the truck onto a narrow shoulder, cutting the engine. The headlights died, leaving them in a cocoon of pre-dawn gray. He spread out a weathered local map across the steering wheel, tracing a line with his finger. "There's an old logging road that cuts through here," he said, tapping a faded dotted line. "Hasn't been used in years, but it'll get us to the ridge faster than the main routes. Malik won't expect it." Mara leaned in, studying the proposed path. "How bad is it?" "Rough. Probably washed out in places. But I know these mountains. Used to run salvage jobs up here. The road's still there, just forgotten." Through the windshield, sleet peppered the glass in waves. Y9 shifted in his carrier, reminding them of their shrinking timeline. "Better than being sitting ducks on the main road," Mara agreed. She pulled out her phone, fingers moving quickly across the screen. "While you get us repositioned, I need to send a message." "Thought you said no calls?" Bram asked, already turning the key. "Not a call. A text to Federal Marshal Kate Reeves. We worked together on trafficking cases before." Mara's face was lit by the blue glow as she typed. "She'll understand what's happening from just a few code words. If Hartigan tries to interfere, we'll have backup ready." The truck growled to life. Bram guided it carefully off the shoulder and onto what looked like solid wall of brush. But as they pushed through, old tire ruts emerged, deeply carved into the earth. The forgotten logging spur. Branches scraped the sides as they pressed forward. The track was barely wider than the truck, hemmed in by decades of regrowth. Bram drove by feel more than sight, reading the way the chassis moved, adjusting power and angle with tiny corrections. "Message sent," Mara reported, tucking her phone away. "Now we just need to—" The truck lurched as a wheel dropped into a hidden washout. Bram feathered the gas, letting momentum carry them through rather than gunning it. The engine's pitch changed as they climbed out, but they kept moving. "Sorry," he said. "There'll be more of those." "You seem to know what you're doing." There was a note of respect in Mara's voice. The sleet was transforming into a thick fog that turned their headlights into useless glare. Bram switched them off, relying instead on ambient light and his memory of the terrain. The darkness pressed close around them. "Used to do a lot of night driving up here," he explained, hands steady on the wheel. "Towing broken-down vehicles back to the yard. You learn to feel the road." They crested a rise and found a fallen pine blocking their path. Bram stopped, considering. "I've got a chainsaw in the back," he said. "No time," Mara countered. "And the noise would carry. Let me check if there's room to squeeze past on the right." She climbed out with a flashlight, moving carefully on the slick ground. The beam cut through fog as she assessed the obstacle. After a moment, she waved him forward, guiding him inch by inch past the fallen trunk. The truck's side mirror scraped bark, but held. Back inside, Mara brushed wet hair from her face. That worked, but how many more surprises are waiting? "Enough to keep Malik from following easily," Bram said. "That's the point." They pushed on through the fog. The old road switched back and forth up the ridge, each turn invisible until they were in it. Bram drove by instinct and memory, feeling how the truck's weight shifted, listening to subtle changes in tire noise that warned of soft spots. A section of shoulder had collapsed, leaving barely enough width to pass. Mara held her breath as their outside tires rolled within inches of the drop. But Bram's steady hands kept them true, and they cleared it without incident. "My father would have loved this road," Mara said after a while. "He taught me to drive on tracks like this back in Montana. Said anyone could handle a highway, but back roads showed what you were made of." Smart man. "He was." She smiled faintly. "Taught me to read sign, too. Wolf tracks, den locations, behavior patterns, everything I'd need later for this work." Y9 whined softly from his carrier. The sound strengthened their resolve. Every obstacle they overcame was one step closer to getting him home. The fog began to thin as they gained elevation. False dawn painted the clouds ahead in shades of pearl and ash. They were running out of dark. "We need to find fresh signs soon," Mara said. "Once the sun hits, any scent trails will start breaking down fast." Bram nodded, threading them through another tight passage between boulders. "This spur ends about a half-mile ahead, comes out near some old clear cuts. Good denning territory. Lots of cover. Water nearby. Perfect for a pack with pups." Mara was already preparing her tracking gear. "How close can you get us?" "Quarter mile, maybe less. After that, we walk." They rounded a bend and found their path blocked by a massive tangle of storm-felled trees. This time there was no way around. "End of the line," Bram said, killing the engine. "We go on foot from here." The sudden silence was absolute. No engine noise, no radio static, just the soft patter of water dripping from branches and Y9's quiet breathing. Dawn was coming. It was time to move. They gathered their gear efficiently, tracking equipment, the carrier with Y9, emergency supplies. The next phase would be critical. Find the den, approach carefully, make the handoff. Every minute would count. Bram secured the truck, making sure it was stable on the narrow track. They'd need it for the return journey, whatever happened next. Then he shouldered his pack and nodded to Mara. "Ready?" She checked her compass one last time and adjusted Y9's carrier. "Ready. Let's find his family." They moved into the lightening forest, leaving the relative safety of the truck behind. Ahead lay uncertainty, but also hope. The old logging road had served its purpose, giving them a chance to beat Malik to their goal. Now it was up to them to make that chance count. The sky continued to brighten as they picked their way forward. Somewhere ahead, a wolf pack waited, unaware that their lost pup was coming home. Bram and Mara moved purposefully through the dawn, every step bringing them closer to their moment of truth. The ridge materialized through the thinning fog like the weathered spine of some ancient creature. Jagged rocks pierced the mist, their edges softened by clusters of pine and juniper. Bram eased the truck to a stop on a relatively flat stretch of ground, then cut the engine. In the sudden quiet, every sound took on new meaning. Water dripped from branches, wind whispered through the trees, and from the carrier between them, Y9 let out a soft, questioning whimper. Mara held up her hand, listening intently. Her eyes closed as she filtered through the morning sounds, searching for anything that might signal the presence of wolves. Years of fieldwork had taught her to trust her ears as much as her eyes. "There," she whispered, pointing toward a stand of timber about 200 yards ahead. "Fresh tracks." Bram followed her gaze. Even in the dim pre-dawn light, he could make out the arc of paw prints in the soft earth. They were smaller than adult tracks, likely other pups from Y9's family group. "How old?" he asked, keeping his voice low. Mara crouched to examine the closest print. "Very fresh. The edges are still sharp. No water pooled inside despite the recent rain. They can't be more than an hour old." Hope flickered in Bram's chest, but he kept his expression neutral. They'd come too far to let optimism cloud their judgment now. They gathered their gear methodically. Mara shouldered her pack with its scientific equipment, while Bram carefully lifted Y9's carrier. The pup was alert now, nose working overtime as familiar scents reached him through the carrier's ventilation holes. They advanced slowly through the thinning fog, placing each foot with deliberate care to minimize noise. The ground was treacherous, loose shale mixed with patches of rain-slicked pine needles. One wrong step could send rocks clattering down the slope, potentially spooking their quarry. After 15 careful minutes, they reached a natural platform formed by an outcrop of weathered shale. Scrubby juniper provided cover on 3 sides, and the position offered a clear view of the surrounding terrain. "This is it," Mara said. "Perfect sight lines, multiple escape routes, enough cover to make the pack feel secure. We'll place him here." Bram nodded, helping her clear a small space. They positioned the carrier so its opening would face the direction of the tracks, then stepped back to assess their work. Y9 had gone quiet, but his bright blue eyes tracked their every movement. The pup seemed to sense the gravity of the moment, remaining still except for the occasional twitch of his nose as he sampled the air. "Now we wait," Mara said, checking her watch. "Standard protocol is to maintain line of sight from a minimum safe distance. Give them space to approach on their own terms." They retreated about 50 yards, finding cover behind a fallen log. The position let them monitor the carrier while staying out of sight of any approaching wolves. Bram pulled out his binoculars, while Mara readied her camera with its powerful zoom lens. The minutes crawled by. The fog continued to lift, revealing more of the landscape with each passing moment. Colors emerged from the gray, the deep green of pines, the rust red of exposed rock, the pale yellow of spring grass pushing through in protected patches. Y9 whimpered again, the sound carrying clearly in the still morning air. This time something answered. The call came from the timber ahead. A long, low howl that made the hair on the back of Bram's neck stand up. It wasn't the Hollywood wolf howl of movies and television. This was softer, more melodic, with complex harmonics that spoke of family bonds and ancient instincts. "That's them," Mara breathed, her professional composure cracking slightly to reveal pure joy. "That's his mother." More calls joined the first, other adult wolves, and the higher-pitched voices of pups. The family was close, alive, and calling to their lost member. For the first time since finding Y9 in the storm, success seemed truly within reach. Bram felt something loosen in his chest, a knot of tension he hadn't even been aware of carrying. He glanced at Mara and found her wiping away tears with the back of her hand. "Sorry," she whispered, managing a watery smile. "It's just, after everything we've been through to get here, hearing them, knowing they're still together, still waiting for him, I understand, Bram said quietly. And he did. Whatever came next, dealing with Roebuck's schemes, exposing the corruption, facing the consequences of their actions, this moment made it all worthwhile. They had given an innocent creature a chance to return to where he belonged. The calls continued, growing closer. Through his binoculars, Bram caught glimpses of movement in the trees, gray shapes flowing like smoke between the trunks. The pack was approaching cautiously, testing the air, ensuring no trap awaited their lost pup. Y9 responded with increasing excitement, his whimpers taking on a singing quality that matched his family's calls. The sound spoke of joy and longing and home, emotions that transcended the boundary between species. The weather seemed to approve of their mission. The last wisps of fog were burning away as the sun climbed higher, revealing a sky washed clean by the night's storm. The wind had settled to a gentle breeze that carried the mingled scents of pine sap, wet earth, and wild things. Mara's camera clicked softly as she documented the reunion. These images would be vital later. Proof of the successful return, evidence that the pack was intact and healthy despite Roebuck's claims of aggressive behavior. They maintained their position, barely breathing, as the morning unfolded around them. Protocol demanded they wait until the family group made contact with Y9, then allow them time to withdraw safely before retrieving the empty carrier. It was the final test of patience in a night that had demanded so much of them. The forest had gone quiet except for the wolf calls, as if nature itself was holding its breath to witness this moment of healing. Even the awa birds seemed to be waiting, their dawn chorus temporarily suspended in deference to the larger drama playing out beneath their perches. Bram found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought them here, from that first moment of seeing what he thought was a stray pup in his headlights, through the revelations and dangers that followed. He glanced at Mara, this stranger who had become an ally and perhaps something more, and felt grateful for whatever twist of fate had put him on that rain-slick road at exactly the right moment. The calls were very close now. Through his binoculars, Bram could make out at least 3 adult wolves, moving with fluid grace through the timber. Their fur was the same silvery gray as Y9's, marked with subtle variations that spoke of family resemblance. They paused frequently to test the air, their movements displaying both caution and purpose. Behind them, partially hidden by brush, smaller shapes darted and tumbled, Y9 siblings, unable to completely contain their excitement despite their parents' careful approach. Their presence was the final confirmation that this was indeed the right family group. "Perfect," Mara whispered, her camera continuing to gather precious documentation. "Everything's perfect. Just let them come at their own pace now." The sharp crack of a rifle shattered the delicate moment. The sound echoed off the ridge walls, scattering birds into the brightening sky. Bram's heart lurched as he saw Deputy Hartigan and Perry Malik emerge from the tree line, weapons raised. "Don't move!" Malik's voice carried an edge of triumph. "That animal is evidence in an ongoing investigation." Bram felt his muscles tense. Beside him, Mara went very still, her camera lowering slowly to her side. The morning air, which moments ago had held such promise, now felt thick with danger. "Deputy Hartigan," Mara said, her voice carrying the weight of authority despite the situation. "I'm a federal wildlife biologist. This is a protected species recovery operation." Hartigan's mirrored sunglasses reflected the early light, making his expression unreadable. "Ma'am, we have reports of illegal wildlife possession and interference with a county predator control investigation." Another shot cracked through the air, a warning this time. The bullet struck a nearby tree, sending splinters flying. Bram felt the sting as tiny wooden shards peppered his cheek. The sound sent Y9 into a frightened crouch, his soft whimpers cutting straight to Bram's heart. Something snapped inside him. Without conscious thought, Bram launched himself at Malik. The bigger man hadn't expected such direct resistance, and both men went down hard. They rolled toward a tangle of fallen logs, grappling for control. Malik's rifle went spinning. His fist connected with Bram's jaw, but Bram barely felt it. All the frustration, all the worry of the night poured into his muscles as he fought. This wasn't just about Y9 anymore. It was about every wrong thing these men had done, every animal they'd hurt, every lie they'd told. "Stop, both of you!" Deputy Hartigan's voice cracked with strain. His rifle wavered between the wrestling men and Mara, who had positioned herself to block Y9 from view. Then everything changed. A shadow detached itself from the tree line, gray as morning mist, silent as falling snow. Y9's mother emerged into the open, her presence commanding absolute attention. She made no sound, no threatening move. She simply stood, watching the scene with eyes that held ancient wisdom. Hartigan's rifle barrel dipped, then lowered completely. Bram, still tangled with Malik, saw the deputy's face drain of color. This wasn't the murderous beast from Roebuck's reports. This wasn't the monster that had supposedly been terrorizing livestock. This was something else entirely. Something wild and dignified and utterly real. "My God," Hartigan whispered. The carefully constructed wall of justifications he'd built around himself began to crumble. Every rushed approval he'd signed, every complaint he'd fast-tracked without proper investigation, every time he'd looked the other way, it all came crashing down in the face of this living truth. Mara seized the moment. Her voice rang out clear and steady, cutting through the tension. "Deputy, I am legally empowered under Federal Code Title 50, Section 17.21 to conduct endangered species protection activities. Any interference constitutes a federal offense." She kept talking, laying out statutes and regulations in a calm, professional tone that seemed to steady Hartigan further. "The evidence of staged predation has already been documented and transmitted to federal authorities. This operation is being monitored." Malik tried to surge up, but Bram held him down. The enforcer's face was twisted with rage and something else. Fear. His carefully constructed scheme was unraveling, and he knew it. More shapes appeared in the trees, other pack members drawn by the commotion. They moved like shadows through the timber, neither advancing nor retreating. Their presence added weight to the tableau, as if nature itself was bearing witness. Hartigan's hands were shaking now. The sunglasses slipped down his nose, revealing eyes wide with conflict. Roebuck said—" "We know what Roebuck said," Mara replied, her tone gentler now. "But you're seeing the truth right in front of you. These animals aren't the enemy. They're families, trying to survive. The real crimes here were committed by people, not wolves." Y9 chose that moment to let out a small, hopeful whimper. The sound seemed to travel straight to his mother's ears. She took one step forward, then another, her movements liquid grace. Despite the humans and their weapons, despite the chaos of the moment, the pull of family was stronger than fear. Hartigan's rifle clattered to the ground. I won't be part of this anymore." His voice was rough, with emotion. "All those reports I rushed through, I told myself I was just doing my job, keeping order. But this—" He gestured helplessly at the wolves, at the morning, at everything. Malik bucked suddenly, trying to break free. "You gutless coward," he snarled at Hartigan. "After everything Roebuck's done for you—" "Shut up!" Bram growled, tightening his hold. The morning light caught the tears tracking down Hartigan's face as the deputy pulled out his handcuffs. "Perry Malik," he said, voice steadying with each word. "You're under arrest for wildlife trafficking, falsifying evidence, and assault." He looked at Mara. "Ma'am, I'd appreciate it if you'd contact those federal authorities now. I believe I have some statements to make." The mother wolf stood watching, neither advancing further nor retreating. Her presence anchored the scene, a reminder of what was truly at stake. Behind her, the rest of the pack waited in the timber, their lives suspended between danger and deliverance. Mara maintained her protective stance near Y9, but her voice was thick with relief as she made the call. Morning light streamed through the trees, touching everything with gold: the wolves, the humans, the forest itself. It illuminated a scene of endings and beginnings, of truth finally breaking through deception. In the distance, more wolves began to call, not the seeking sounds of before, but songs of family and belonging. Y9 answered, his voice stronger now, carrying hope instead of fear. The sound rose above the ridge, above the fading echoes of violence, a reminder that some bonds run deeper than human schemes or human laws. The moment shifted with violent suddenness. Malik surged up from beneath Bram's grip, his movement snake-quick and brutal. Before anyone could react, he had Mara in a chokehold, the cold steel of his rifle barrel pressed under her protective vest. "Drop the phone!" he snarled, jerking Mara backward. "Now!" Mara's device clattered to the ground, the screen cracking on impact. Blood trickled down Bram's cheek where a broken branch had gouged him during the earlier struggle. His chest heaved with exhaustion, and his usually steady hands trembled slightly. "Call them off," Malik demanded, tightening his grip on Mara. "Whatever backup you contacted, call it off right now." The storm that had briefly cleared now returned with a vengeance. Icy sleet pelted down, coating the ground in a treacherous sheen. Every surface turned slick as glass, making each step a dangerous gamble. Deputy Hartigan stood frozen, his abandoned rifle lying useless in the mud. His eyes darted between the scene before him, from the majestic wolf still standing guard at the tree line, to Malik's desperate grip on Mara, to Bram's battered but unbowed stance. The certainty that had started to form in him wavered under the weight of immediate danger. Y9, still partially hidden behind the outcrop, let out a small, plaintive whimper. The sound seemed to slice through the tension like a knife, reminding them all of what was truly at stake. His mother's ears twitched at the cry, but she held her position, as if understanding that any movement might trigger catastrophe. "This is your last chance," Malik growled, already beginning to drag Mara upslope toward where his truck waited. Each step was treacherous on the sleet-covered ground, but his desperation lent him strength. "Anyone moves, she gets it." Mara struggled to maintain her footing as Malik pulled her backward. Her face was pale but composed, her eyes locked on Bram's. There was something there. Not fear, but determination, even as their carefully laid plans crumbled around them. Bram's shoulders slumped, his previous energy seeming to drain away. The branch wound on his cheek still bled, mixing with the sleet running down his face. He looked defeated, outmatched by Malik's desperate violence. The momentum that had carried them this far, through the storm, past the bridge ambush, up to the ridge itself, felt shattered. Everything they'd worked for hung by a thread, balanced as precariously as their footing on the ice-slick ground. The mother wolf watched it all, her presence both a witness and a reminder of what they were fighting for. Behind her, barely visible in the timber, the rest of the pack waited. Their future, and Y9's chance to rejoin them, seemed to be slipping away with each backward step Malik took. "Keep those hands where I can see them," Malik called out, his voice cracking with strain as he continued forcing Mara upward toward his waiting vehicle. The sleet intensified, drawing a gauzy curtain across the scene, making everything seem unreal and distant. Hartigan's hands opened and closed helplessly at his sides. The truth he'd glimpsed minutes before still burned in his mind, but now paralysis gripped him, caught between his duty and his fear, between what he knew was right and what felt safe. The morning that had promised resolution now felt dark with possibility. Y9 whimpered again, the sound nearly lost in the storm's renewed fury. It was a cry of confusion and longing that seemed to echo the helplessness they all felt, watching Malik drag their hope for justice away one step at a time. Through the sleet, Bram's trained eye caught movement beyond the tree line. There, penned against the narrow meadow's edge, stood a cluster of cattle, Malik's staged bait. The animals shifted nervously, already unsettled by the wolves' presence and the morning's tension. Bram's mind raced, mapping angles and possibilities. With careful movements, he retrieved a road flare from his jacket pocket. His hands, steady despite exhaustion, worked the winch cable free from his truck. He threaded it through a sturdy stump, calculating trajectories and timing in his head. The sleet hissed and sizzled as he struck the flare, its red glare cutting through the gray morning. The cattle immediately perked up, their nervous energy building. At this new threat, Bram positioned himself carefully, knowing timing would be everything. The winch cable ran taut to the pen's gate, ready to snap it open at precisely the right moment. It wasn't an elegant plan, but it didn't need to be. The goal wasn't to hurt anyone, just create enough chaos to break Malik's hold on Mara. Bram could see Malik's overconfidence in his stance, could read Hartigan's shaken resolve in the deputy's uncertain movements. The pieces were in place. Now it was just a matter of timing. The flare crackled in his hand as he waited for the perfect moment, the cattle's nervous energy building with each passing second. The winch cable snapped taut, and the gate burst open with a metallic clang. The sound of thundering hooves filled the air as the frightened cattle surged forward, their massive bodies moving like a fluid wave between the tree stands. The stampeding herd cut a perfect line between Malik and Deputy Hartigan, separating the two men in an instant. In the chaos, Mara saw her chance. She drove her elbow backward and wrenched herself free from Malik's grasp as he stumbled in the slick mud. Bram was there in a flash, his shoulder driving into Malik's chest. The rifle went flying, landing harmlessly in the wet grass. The wail of sirens pierced through the morning air as federal vehicles crested the ridge. The marshal's team had decoded Mara's earlier message and arrived right on time. Tires crunched on gravel as another vehicle approached, Clive Roebuck's truck, racing up to take control of the situation. But Roebuck's arrival only sealed his fate. In the bed of his pickup, plain as day, lay tranquilizer kits and darts, identical matches to the one that had been used on Y9. The evidence was undeniable. The mother wolf stood sentinel at the tree line, her presence a living testament to the truth. Y9 whimpered softly from his protected spot, both of them living proof against every lie Roebuck had told. Deputy Hartigan looked from the wolves to the incriminating evidence and back to his badge. With heavy movements, he unfastened the shield from his chest and lowered it, his eyes dropping to the ground as handcuffs clicked into place around Roebuck and Malik's wrists. The ridge fell quiet as the federal agents took control of the scene. Mara turned her attention back to Y9, her heart beating with renewed purpose. She carefully guided the pup back toward the spot where they'd first heard the pack's call. Within moments, answering howls echoed through the trees, mother and family welcoming their lost member home. The marshal's team worked methodically, photographing and cataloging the evidence from Roebuck's truck. The tranquilizer kits, the modified darts, the staged predation photos. It all told a damning story. Roebuck stood in handcuffs, his face ashen as federal charges were read. Malik slumped in the back of a patrol car, his wildlife trafficking scheme exposed. Deputy Hartigan cooperated, quietly, trading his badge for a chance at redemption through testimony. Under the weight of federal investigation, the County Predator Board met in emergency session. They voted unanimously to cancel the lethal removal order, finally acknowledging the wolves' protected status. The morning fog lifted slowly, revealing a transformed landscape. Bram sat on his truck's tailgate while a medic cleaned the cut on his cheek. His eyes kept drifting to where Mara stood, organizing field reports. When she approached with volunteer paperwork for her wildlife response team, his hand was steady as he signed. "We could use someone with your skills," she said, their handshake lingering. "Someone who understands both the mechanical and the miraculous." Bram nodded, feeling the morning sun warm his face. On the ridge above, a family of wolves moved together through their restored territory. For the first time in years, his solitude felt like a choice he no longer needed to make. Thanks for watching. If any part of this story lingered with you, consider subscribing. I'll be here again tomorrow, sharing another tale that speaks to the soul.